Hello and welcome to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster. We have a lot to get to, two games that we haven't really talked about yet on the pod. Last Friday, UConn knocked off Texas 71-63 in the final game of their non-conference schedule. And then on Tuesday night, there was the 79-60 win over Butler. Both of those games played in People's Bank Arena, the latter of which was the Big East opener for the UConn Huskies. A couple of good wins against teams that I don't know if they're going to end up being NCAA tournament teams, but well coached, well drilled, and some talent on those rosters nonetheless. Before we get into the meat of this thing, please, if you haven't, rate, review, subscribe to this podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts for absolutely free. This stuff really does help in the algorithm, and we are all beholden to the almighty algorithms. So any of that engagement really, really does help if you could throw us a like or throw us a comment or throw us a rating. I want to talk about the bigger picture stuff with UConn season at the end of this pod. Because I think there are some things that can make you feel really, really, really positive about where this group is right now, and things that also maybe are a little bit worrying, but I'm not quite to the point where I'm going to be worried about it yet. But I want to talk about a couple of specifics about these last two games, because I think there are some really important things to kind of take away. The first one for me is Terrace Reed, right? I said this on Twitter when we were watching the Texas game in the first half. I said, is that Terrace Reed and Nikola Jokic out there at the five? And that was because of some of the passing that he was able to do and some of the reads that he was able to make. I thought that his passing in the first half against Texas was a massive step forward. I've said this before, but I think when part of the reason UConn made their leap in the second half of Big East play in the 23 season was that Adama Sanogo went from being a guy that was a black hole to being a guy that you could run offense through in the post. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit out of Terrace Reed. Now, he had the 5 assists in the first half against Texas. In the three halves since then, he's had 0 assists and 6 turnovers. So it's not like he is quite a finished product yet, but that passing opens up so much for UConn when it works. And the reason I say that is that one, it changes what you can do offensively when you have an initiator at the five. When they get to that look where you have your 5 men at the top of the key with the ball in his hands, and they're running a bunch of DHO stuff, and they're running a bunch of dribble handoffs, and they're kind of using the 5 men as a screener, in the best case, regardless of what happens. When that becomes really, really dangerous and even more difficult to guard is when instead of going over the dribble handoff, if you fake it and go back door, which Caravan did a bunch of times against Texas, um, once Terrace Reed is able to make that little bounce pass, this is something that Donovan Clingan became really, really good at as a sophomore, and Adama Sanogo was really good at the last couple of the end of his junior season. That opens up so much more because so much of what you have to do to try to defend UConn is stay connected to the guy that you are guarding, right? It's very difficult to tag or to help off of guys on the weak side of the floor because you never know where that next screen is going to be coming from. And once the big guy is able to become a threat as a passer, it opens up so much more for UConn offensively because you don't have to worry about just like, all right, are we going to be able to fight over this screen? Now it's, all right, if the defense is going to try to anticipate the play, then I'm just going back door and I'm getting a dunk out of it, or I'm getting a layup out of it. And Caravan is really, really good at reading those screens. I think Solo Ball has gotten much better as kind of being an off-ball cutter. Part of the reason why I think we're going to see a continuation of this big jump in his scoring is that he's doing so much more offensively. We'll get to that in a second because I got some things I got to say about Solo Ball, but I think that has been. I don't want to say it's been lacking so far, but it's it's a part of the UConn offense that we're not seeing at the same level that we saw it towards the end of Donovan's sophomore year, the end of Adama's junior year. And that's going to take time, and that's something that you should be expecting. But it's really nice to see flashes of it kind of coming together there, like we did with Terrace in the first half against Texas. Against Butler, I thought what Butler did incredibly well early on in that game, and it looked like it really kind of got in Terrace's head a little bit, was they they did a really good job of denying and fighting over all screens and all interchanges and really making it difficult for UConn to get the ball from a point guard to another guard kind of in the offensive set. And what that resulted in was the ball getting funneled into Terrace Reed in the post, where they didn't double and they didn't help. But at the same time, what Butler did was they were able to wedge out Terrace Reed early on. So Terrace is getting his touches 15 feet away from the basket. So instead of just being able to catch the ball 5 feet away, use his strength, kind of get leverage and just go up and hit a little jump hook, he's got to back people down. And once you're asking Terrace Reed to back people down, once he's got to take 3 or 4 dribbles to get to where he wants to shoot instead of taking one and making a move, it completely changes how effective he is as a post scorer. And it brings a lot more other options for what he could end up doing, like dribbling the ball off his foot, like trying to throw a pass that gets stolen, like having somebody come from the weak side and steal the ball while he can't see him. So I thought Butler for about 10 minutes in this game did a really, really good job of doing that. And part of why I think UConn looked a little bit discombobulated early on was the Bulldogs did about as well at kind of executing that defensive strategy as anyone that we've seen. UConn made a little tweak towards the middle half and late half of the first half. I'll talk about that when we get to Silas Demery because I thought he played a huge role in that. Solo ball. So Solo is still shooting just 30% from three. And the narrative when you listen to some of these broadcasts is that he's having a really bad shooting season. And overall, big picture, that is 100% correct, right? When you have a guy that can shoot the way Solo Ball can shoot, and he's shooting 30% from three, that is a bad year overall. First 7 games of the season, he shot 12 for 49 from three, which is under 25%. In December, the last 5 games, he's shooting 46% from the floor in those 5 games. He's shooting 12 for 31 from three, which is 39% from three. And that includes a game against Texas where he did not play well or shoot well. And in those 5 games, he's averaging 17 points a game. I think that he's turned the corner, right? We haven't seen the blow up game yet, but when we talk about regression to the mean as a shooter, we're not talking about he goes 12 for 49 and then he's going to go 7 for 7 in a game to be able to get his percentages up. Regression to the mean means he goes from shooting 12 for 49 to shooting 12 for 30 and needing 30 shots to get to 12 makes because that's what he is as a shooter, right? He's about a 40+% career shooter. So we've seen the regression to the mean already for Solo. And now that his confidence there, and now that he's kind of figuring out some of his spots, I think that it's only going to be a matter of time before he has one of these explosive games. And I understand that he is coming off of his career high. And I'm sitting here talking about he's about to have a blow up game here at some point. Wouldn't that qualify as his blow up game? Well, here's what I think about that. So I think what's made Solo so much more dangerous this year is that he doesn't have to just be a shooter to be an impact player on the offensive end of the floor. I think he is significantly better as a cutter this year. I think he has gotten significantly better at being able to kind of sneak in and get an offensive rebound and get a tip in and be able to notice when someone is not boxing him out and just kind of go in and get a layup that way. I think that he is much, much, much better putting the ball on the floor. And so far, it's still mostly just kind of like straight line drives where he's really effective. But like he's so long and so explosive and at 6'2" or 6'3" or whatever he is with the kind of vert and wingspan that he has. I think that he's gotten really effective at being able to figure that part of it out. And mid-range pull-ups, he's been elite. This is shocking to me, but UConn, for a team that is as progressive as they are when it comes to thinking about what are good shots and what are not good shots in the sport of basketball, they are actually the best points per shot mid-range jump shooting team from 17 to the 17 feet to the 3-point line in college basketball right now, which I think has a lot to do with how impactful Solo Ball has been getting there. So it's not like this dude's shot is broken. I think he's just been settling a little bit for tough threes. I think part of it, especially early in the year, was he was trying to hunt contact and trying to draw a foul instead of just getting the shot off. So I fully expect that we're going to see a big one. I know he set his career up, which, by the way, I was baffled that 26 was his career high when I saw that because I would have bet my life savings on the fact that he went for 29 or 30 points when he had 7 threes at Marquette. I believe it was last season when he went nuts and they won that game at Marquette. I would have bet my left nut that he would have had 30 points in that game, and he did not. He had 25. So I think 30 is coming here at Xavier, at DePaul, um, at Providence coming up, Marquette at home. Seton Hall is going to be tough. I'm dreading that game at Seton Hall, but there's a lot of reasons to feel good about solo ball and kind of the trajectory that he is on. Man, he's been doing all the other scoring stuff you need him to do, and I mentioned this, but he's gotten significantly better defensively. Right? I don't think that he is someone that you're ever going to confuse with like some of the best all on ball defenders in college basketball. But last year he was a liability. He couldn't get around screens. He couldn't stay in front of people. His feet were all over the place. And this year, I don't know if like the work he put in the offseason, I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's all right, well, Silas is getting the best defender on the floor and you can kind of play off the ball a little bit. Whatever it's been, man, he's a much, much better defender. He's still got some room to grow, but he's been a much, much better defender. And you know, it's been nice to see. Jalen Stewart, Jaden Ross, the last two games. Okay, so against Texas, they combined for 12 points in 25 total minutes. Against Butler, they combined for 13 points and 8 rebounds in 32 total minutes. Now, against Texas, Jalen Stewart had 10 of those 12 points and was the game changer in the second half. He played 19 minutes to Jaden Ross 6. Against Butler, Jaden Ross had all of those points, all of those rebounds, and played 25 of the 32 minutes. I said, I can't remember when it was. I think it was at the start of the season. I said the goal should be for those two to combine for about 30 to 35 minutes a game and for them to combine for 12 to 15 points while shooting a good percentage from three and being impactful players defensively. And that is what you are seeing these last two games. One night it was Stewie that got the job done. One night it was Jaden Ross that got the job done. And, I think that their effort is something that should be celebrated. Ross specifically, man, like Stewie, we've seen Stewie come up huge in big moments before, right? Like he had 15 in the first half of a game last year that UConn won when they probably shouldn't have won that game. It might have been Providence at home, and he kept them in close in that game. And then I think about like the game at Villanova last year when he was tasked with guarding Eric Dixon, and same thing when Villanova came to Connecticut. So we've seen him in these moments step up and do a job when a game plan calls for him to step up and do a job. We have not quite seen that out of Ross as much until this season, but I thought he was electric, man. Like you could see the crowd feed off of the dunks that he had, the reverse dunk that he had, the tip dunk that he had. He had 4 offensive rebounds. He was only 1 for 4, but he is shooting those threes with confidence, man. And he's no longer the biggest thing that you can say about Ross, and I keep saying this and I keep going back to it, but like he's not when he's missing off the back of the rim and is bouncing straight up in the air back towards him, right? That's when you know you're shooting with confidence. When that ball is online and on target and just a little bit long, and those are your misses, that's when you know you're a good shooter shooting with confidence, right? When you are firing the ball off the side of the backboard, when you are firing it 3 feet over the basket and it doesn't come close to the rim, you're not shooting it with confidence. No one's going to make 100% of the jump shots that they take. You're going to end up missing. When you miss just a little bit long online off the back rim, that's when you know you are a shooter shooting with confidence and shooting well. And that's what his misses were last night. He was 1 for 4, but he shot them with confidence. And I mean, the way that I look at it is you play that game again, he gets those shots again. More often than not, he's going to hit 2 or 3, maybe even 4 of them. So I love the shots, love the effort, love what we got out of him. And it's not the first time that he's been on the floor for like a big game-changing second half run. He was on the floor when UConn made their little bit of their spurt against Florida. He was on the floor when UConn made the run against Kansas in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. Like he's really ingrained himself as a second half game changer. And championship teams, they need guys like that accept their role, that accept their identity, that know that this is what I am here for. That understand I'm not out here to go try to get 30 points in this game. I'm not out here to do anything more than what I'm being asked to do in my very specific role. They are being paid well for it this year. That's the way that NIL works, but they have accepted those jobs the way that Naheem Aline accepted his job as an off the bench kind of a 3-and-D scorer in 2023, the way that Joey California accepted his role as instant offense off the bench, the way that Hassan Diarra accepted who he was as a player and leaned all the way into it, right? Their effort, their production, and frankly, their sacrifice should not be something that is ever overlooked. I'd throw Malachi Smith in that conversation as well. Malachi Smith could have transferred anywhere in the country and made more money, right? There were a lot of high major Division I programs that would have given him a starting spot and probably would have paid him a little bit more than what he's getting right now. And he came to UConn because he decided he wanted to play a role and win. If Jalen Stewart put his name in the portal, he would have made more money by entering the portal, by driving up the bidding war. If Jaden Ross had put his name in the portal, he would have made more money by entering the portal, maybe even transferring. They probably would have ended up in a situation where they're scoring more, where they're getting more shots, where they're maybe able to, let's just say you transfer to another high major program in the ACC, you get a starting spot on a team that goes 500 in that conference. You average 13 a game, and then all of a sudden you set yourself up for your next transfer spot where you can maybe make 2 or 3 times as much. So they made a significant sacrifice to be able to stay at UConn and win, and that is something that should forever be celebrated by UConn fans. Help make it up to them. You see him at a restaurant, go and make sure he's not paying for his next beverage or whatever it is. And with Stewie and Ross specifically, and I would throw Solo into this part of the conversation as well, guys like that are what we all want in college basketball, right? They come in as freshmen, and you watch them be freshmen, and you watch them struggle, and you watch them have moments where they can't get it done, and you're sitting there pulling for them, and you just want them to figure it out and want them to work. And then as sophomores, they come in, and they really earn minutes in the rotation, and they become legitimate contributors to help a team win. And for UConn, it did not go quite as well for that group as sophomores as you wanted to, but they all came back as juniors. They become integral contributors. I would say Solo Ball is probably the biggest star on this team, I think is fair to say. I don't know if he's necessarily the best player, but he's in that conversation. If he keeps trending the way that he's trending, he's in the conversation for Big East Player of the Year. Jalen Stewart has stepped into really big roles coming off the bench. He was a starter at the start of the year. Jaden Ross is in a significantly bigger role now. And when that happens and you're there for those 3 years and you see that growth and you see that development, that's what gets fans invested in being a fan emotionally, specifically of those players, right? Because you don't just want to see a team win. You're not just rooting for the laundry. You're rooting for Jaden Ross because you saw what he went through as a freshman. You saw him stick it out as a sophomore. You saw him come back as a junior, and you see him thriving. The roar when he had the dunk off the tip dunk and then it transitioned a couple minutes later, he comes down and he does the reverse. The roar in Hartford was not just celebrating, oh yeah, that was a sick dunk. It was celebrating, this kid is having his moment in a game that matters in Big East play. And all of us are so fucking happy for him. And it's awesome to see. And that is what you want, right? Like, there are a lot of things that I think are really fucked up about the sport of college basketball and the sport in college athletics as a whole right now. And there's a lot of things that you kind of have to just accept, right? That this is the way it's going. This is where we're going to end up being. If you're going to have NIL be something that is a way to make sure these players get paid, you kind of have to accept that there's going to be ways that these programs have to go out and make money. It is what it is. But the way that those two play, the reaction from the fan base when they do well, and the commitment that they have to the program that all of us UConn fans love, it reminds you that, like, it's not all bad. It's not all ruined. The joy and the charm, the things that we love about college basketball, there's still some of that stuff there, man. You got to look a little bit harder for it, but there's still stuff there that you can really enjoy and celebrate at a level that goes just beyond, yeah, we ended up having the biggest budget, so we found a way to be able to win. And I love seeing it, and it is awesome, and I'm so happy for those kids that they are able to have some of those moments.
As you know by now, we have teamed up with BetMGM again this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we will have special offers for Field of 68 fans, including same-game parlays, best-in-class live betting, and daily odds boost. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app. You sign up using bonus code FIELD. You deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Make this college basketball season one for the history books. Make it legendary. And don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that. Speaking of the bench guys, like, how many programs would take Eric Riba as a starter right now in college basketball? Like 95% of them. All but maybe like 20 would take him as a starter and the best player. For a kid that maybe didn't have the best senior high school season, for a kid where there was some, concerns about how he would be able to adjust to the physicality of the Division I level, to see him have this kind of success where, he's popping up on draft boards now is really, really awesome to see, and good for him, man. He's kept working. All right. Here's where we got to talk about Silas Demery. And I thought Florida and Texas, those two games, were about as poorly as he's played offensively. The defense and the effort and that stuff has been there. I don't think that you can question any of that right now. But you can see that he's just like in a really bad way on the offensive end. And I think he's mostly in his head, and I think it's confidence. And I think he's not quite at a point where he is reacting to what is happening, and he is thinking it through, and he's kind of like a half second behind. And when you're in this offense, you can't be a half second behind, because the way that it works is you're going to create openings for about a half of a second. I thought, it was fouls against Florida. There were a little bit of turnover issues against Texas, but I thought Butler was huge for him because he played 16 first half minutes. He had 7 assists in that first half. He was a steadying presence when a little tweak defensively kind of had UConn all discombobulated offensively. It was a little bit chaotic early. And he was able to just kind of steady the ship and get this thing to where, when you play a bad half of basketball, and I frankly think the first half against Butler was a pretty bad half of basketball for UConn, and you head into the break up 39-25, up 14 at home in a position where, like, yeah, you probably got this thing locked up and this thing's probably over. That, I think a lot of that credit has to go to Demery and the way that his presence at the point kind of calmed everything down. Now, obviously, his defense on Finley Bizjack helped, but he did a lot of stuff that went beyond just what would pop up in a box score that I think needs to be highlighted and recognized. I said earlier, what UConn did to adjust was kind of, they started rejecting all of their screens, and instead of having, if someone comes up and sets a screen, instead of having one guy go off of it and the screener roll to the basket, what they started doing was having the screener come up, and then the guy that was supposed to run off the screen reject it, and the guy that was setting the screen go roll and replace to where the guy coming off the screen would have gone. So you still have two guys going in the same direction. You just kind of switch who those two guys are. And I think that kind of messed Butler up enough and created enough opportunities for kind of backdoors and openings. And Demery was able to find those guys. Earlier this year, one of the things that Dan said about him, and I will keep going back to this point because I think a lot of times there's bullshit that comes out in these press conferences, but I think that this was one of the most telling things that we could hear from a coach this year. And what he said was that Silas's eyes were in the wrong place. And what that means is he's not looking where he needs to be looking in the half second that he's going to have to be able to find a player that's going to be open on a cut. And
The fact that he was able to get some of those assists while doing this, which is a tweak offensively, I think is a great sign for where he is and that he is starting to figure this out. I'm not worried about the scoring part of it. I know that that's going to come. I know how good he is offensively. I saw what he did in the last month of the season at Georgia last year. This dude is a stud, I am telling you guys. It is a matter of him figuring out when he can pick his spots to be able to allow him to thrive. And I think that that is getting the scoring. I think the best way to put it, the scoring will come when the confidence in the system exists. And I think that we're starting to see him get a little bit more confident in the system. This stuff takes time, man. I'll remind you guys. Let's go back in time a little bit. December 31st, 2022. Tristan Newton had 6 points and a loss at Xavier. Then he had 6 points and a loss at Providence. Then he had 7 points and a loss at Marquette. He was scoreless at home in that ugly loss to St. John's. He had 11 points and a loss at Seton Hall, where UConn, I think that was the game where they blew the 17-point lead, where a couple guys had COVID, and I want to say it was Luke Murray that coached it. It was a weird ending to that game. He had 2 points and a loss at Creighton later that year. But when UConn figured it all out, and I will go to my grave saying that the game that kind of switched everything for him was that home loss to Xavier, he had 23 points. He scored 15 of his 23 in the second half, and he was the one that helped carry UConn back from down 47-28 early in the second half of that game. They lost by 3, but they were right there. They figured it out offensively. And then from there, he just kind of took off and he never really looked back. So I have no doubt that Silas is going to get there. But you got to remember when we're talking about this, right? Like it took Tristan Newton until basically February of his first season with UConn to get to the point where the staff wasn't kind of thinking to themselves, maybe we made the wrong eval on this guy and it's not going to work out. So there's still probably a month and a half for Silas to kind of get to where he was at the level that Tristan was at. And I think that he's probably a little bit further along than Tristan was at this point in the season. So stick with him, man. Cheer him on, boost him, have his back. The best thing if you want this guy to start playing better, like the best thing to do is when he is in the game and he makes a play, give him a standing ovation, get behind him, show him that you have faith in him when you are there. There's a lot of stuff that people that aren't going to the games can't do to kind of show their appreciation for these guys. But I think that's a really big thing. So that's what I would kind of suggest here. Now, the big picture stuff about this group, I kind of said this earlier, the big picture stuff to me, they are not even close to what their ceiling can be this season. And they're sitting here at 11-1, a win over Florida, a win over BYU, a win over Illinois, a win over Texas. That they've put together a really strong resume, and they are not even close to what they can be, especially offensively. And Reed, I've been told he's probably hovering around 75%. There's some grumblings, I think, behind the scene that he might be kind of milking this ankle injury a little bit. But I will say, if you're not back on the court within 3 days after getting a gunshot wound, I think Dan Hurley might be saying that that you're milking it. So, but it's also important to remember, right? Like he dealt with a hamstring early on. Silas Demery was dealing with a calf thing early on. Braylon Mullins was dealing with an ankle thing. So between those 3 guys who are 3 critical pieces in what UConn wants to do offensively, they've missed huge chunks of the time where they're supposed to get acclimated to what this new complicated offensive system is. So I think they're still a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to getting in sync and having that offense humming the way that you want it to be humming. And it's not that far away, right? A couple more of these open threes go down. A couple more of these reads offensively get made. So you're getting a couple of dunks instead of dunks earlier in the shot clock instead of contested shots at the end of the shot clock. Once that happens, 3, 4, 5 times a game, UConn goes from being a team that is a top 20-ish offense to being a top 5 offense in college basketball. And when you factor in that this team is already drastically improved on the defensive end of the floor, I don't see what is going to slow them down. They are heading to as crazy as this sounds, the easier part of their schedule, right? It's at DePaul, at Xavier, Marquette at home. I don't have it in front of me. There's a game against Georgetown at home in there. There's at Seton Hall. It's not like they are heading into the part of their schedule where you would typically think, oh man, this Big East play, man, this is about to get tough. They just played BYU, they played Arizona, they played Florida. They played teams that are better than anything that they're going to see in Big East play this year. There's a real chance that they don't play another tournament team until February. Think about it like that. This is when they're going to find a way to be able to get it right. So you go through all those tests, you build out your resume. Now you got about a month to be able to get to the point where these guys are ready to go and clicking, and you get them going in February, and you ramp it up. And by the time you get to March, then this team is firing on all cylinders. And when they're firing all cylinders, look, I think that they can be as good as the 2023 team. I'm not sure they can be quite as good as the 2024 team, but they can be as good as the 2023 team. And that should be enough to have them in the mix for winning a national title. Now, Houston is low. I'm sorry. Michigan is loaded. Arizona is loaded. Um, Iowa State is really, really damn good, man. I've watched enough of them to believe that that is a team that can win a national championship. Duke and Cam Boozer, like they are really good. North Carolina, once they get Seth Trimble back, whew, Caleb Wilson is the guy. Like we talk about the matchups with Alex Garrett, man. Caleb Wilson is a guy that might be able to make it so that teams that they can match up with Alex Kierman at that 4 spot. So there's a lot of really, really damn good teams in college basketball this year. So I don't think it's a given at all that UConn's going to end up running through the national championship. But I don't think any of these teams are going to roll over UConn, not when they're playing their best basketball. So, I'm here for it, man. I think that they got a real chance to make some noise. I think they got a real chance to get themselves into Indianapolis. And if you can get to Indianapolis, all you got to do is win 2 games to win national championship. So anybody can do that. Yeah. So look, we got DePaul coming up next. You got Xavier coming up after that. I don't know. I can't sit here and say and promise you that I'm going to do a reaction pod to DePaul. If they go in there and they beat them by 45 points, I don't know if I'll have it in me to be able to do that. I'm going to try to get a guest on here at some point to do kind of like a reset of just what the start of the season has looked like. If I have a little bit of time here this week or maybe early next week. So if not, enjoy your Christmas, enjoy your holidays, enjoy your Hanukkah if that's what you celebrate, and be safe. And we'll see you guys on the other side of the year, I guess, the other side of the calendar. Maybe not even until I'll probably get something out before the new year, but we'll see what ends up happening, man. But for where I am right now, I think UConn's got themselves in a great position to compete for a 1 seed, compete for a Final Four berth, and compete for a national championship.